Ni hao and a very warm welcome to this edition of News Hour on CCTV International. I'm Edwin Ma in Beijing with 60 minutes of the latest news from China and around the world. And we begin with the session of the UN General Assembly in New York, where the general debate is taking place. Chinese President Jintao is calling on the world to establish a reliable, beneficial and equally safe environment for all people. Yang Yan reports.
Addressing the 192-member General Assembly's debate at UN headquarters on Wednesday, President Hu Jintao said the world now is facing new opportunities and challenges. He says in addition to traditional problems such as climate change and food security, countries are facing new threats such as terrorism, nuclear proliferation and a pandemic. Hu Jintao emphasizes global cooperation is the only way to cope with these problems.
面对前所未有的机遇和挑战
In the face of unprecedented opportunities and challenges, we members of the international community should commit ourselves to peace, development, cooperation, common progress and tolerance, and continue our joint endeavor to build a harmonious world of enduring peace and common prosperity, and contribute to the noble cause of peace and development of mankind.
The development of developing countries is another highlight of the President's speech. He points out the difficulties developing countries are facing and calls for the United Nations to foster an international environment in favor of these countries. The Chinese President pledges to further assist the development of other developing countries.
China will continue to implement the measures announced at the UN high-level event on Millennium Development Goals to assist other developing countries in speeding up development and facilitate the attainment of the MDG. China will follow through on the measures announced at the Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, increase assistance to Africa, expand trade and investment, provide human resources and technological support for African countries in such areas as agriculture, health, education, and disaster preparedness.
Hu Jintao also tells the UN General Assembly the whole world should take responsible measures to counter the international financial crisis and firmly oppose trade protectionism. Yang Yan, CCTV.
Now, for more analysis on the general debate at the UN General Assembly, our current affairs commentator Dr. Gao Zhekai joins us by phone. Hello, Dr. Gao. Thanks for being with us here on News Hour.
Thank you.
President Hu Jintao made a speech on building a peaceful world on Wednesday during the UN's general debate. What do you regard as the highlights of his speech?
He emphasized the need to be mutually accommodating of each other. So I think his speech basically, set out for the rest of the world where China stands on major international issues like, for example, nuclear disarmament, nuclear proliferation, as well as China's position on financial crisis, etc. So I think, as I mentioned, this will pave the way for China's diplomacy for years to come.
Certainly a wide-ranging speech, and President Hu also noted that the entire world should continue the joint endeavour to face the instability and uncertainties in the international landscape. What's your interpretation of that?
Yes, of course. President Hu emphasized that the world is increasingly one world, and no one can really hide behind a national wall to protect only itself. Major issues like the nuclear proliferation, like the financial crisis, like the epidemic, like the energy shortage as well as the food shortage, they are all global issues. Therefore, any single country will not be sufficient to deal with these issues, and only international collaboration and cooperation under the international framework, multilateralism, etc., will be able to pool all the resources in the world to deal with these global challenges at the same time.
The development of developing countries was another highlight of the President's speech, and he called for more assistance from developed countries to help developing nations, especially during the global financial downturn. How have China's efforts in this assistance worked?
Well, indeed, in the course of this global financial crisis, many developed countries were actually very much focused on putting their own houses in order, dealing with the implications of the financial crisis on their own economy. Therefore, they tend to kind of reduce the emphasis on their official aid to the developing countries. Whereas in China, I think while we are also putting up a lot of efforts in dealing with the financial crisis itself, we are emphasizing the continuation of the official assistance to the developing countries, and President Hu Jintao singled out the African countries in particular. And I think this is particularly necessary because otherwise the developing countries, especially the African countries, tend to be marginalized as another victim of the international financial crisis.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there, but many thanks indeed for your analysis, and that's our current affairs commentator, Dr. Gao Zhikai.